Hi everyone. Let's take a look at the following limit. Find the limit of the square root of x minus 2 divided by the square root of x minus 4 as x is approaching to 4 from the positive side. Step number 1. Recognize this is a one-sided limit. And what that means is you can draw a number line and you're thinking about a number to the right of 4. So one number you can think about would be 4.01. And the reason why I am using 4.01 is just to show you that if you do plug in x equal to 4.01, you're going to get a positive number inside the square root. So that's kind of the whole reasoning behind this 4.01 versus if you were finding the left limit, that will give you a negative number in the square root. Now, if I did plug in 4.01 or if I plug in 4, you will recognize you're going to get a 0 in the denominator and a 0 in the numerator. So you have to move on to the next step. So there are many steps when it comes to limits. The following step would be multiplying the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the square root of x minus 2. And of course, the square root of x minus 2, the conjugate becomes the square root of x plus 2 divided by itself. Effectively, you're doing two things. You're multiplying the entire limit by 1, so you're not changing the actual value. However, the second thing is you're changing the form. So what that means is if you look at the numerator, you're applying this idea called the difference of squares, a minus b times a plus b, which is a squared minus b squared. So now that becomes x minus 4. If you look at the denominator, you can copy it as is. You don't need to expand it. So I'll put the brackets back just like that. Now, if you really think about the numerator, x minus 4, isn't that the same as the square root of x minus 4 times the square root of x minus 4? And by expressing it into two different parts, you can see that you can cross out x minus 4 underneath the square root for the top and the bottom, which means from the numerator and the denominator. And now you go back to step 1, which means you're going to plug in x to be 4. So in this case, this becomes the square root of 4 minus 4 divided by the square root of 4 plus 2. If you look at the numerator, that's going to give you 0. And if you look at the denominator, that's going to give you exactly 4. 0 divided by 4 is going to be 0. Now, to confirm you're doing it right, what I would say is, again, spend 1 extra minute, graph the function. Make sure this makes sense algebraically and graphically. That is key. So if I go back and I graph y equal to the square root of x minus 2 divided by the square root of x minus 4, the graph, roughly speaking, looks something like that. And what happens is, in the world of limits, when you're finding x approaching to 4 from the positive side, the corresponding y value is going to be 0. That's how you double check if the answer makes sense. I hope this makes sense.